How can I train myself to lean more on my perspective?
There's two really quick things that you can do. The first is immediately distrust your emotions. Know right away when you're feeling emotions. In other words, what I'm saying is don't trust your gut, which is the antithesis of what most people tell you to do. Most people say, trust your gut. I'm telling you right now, your gut is more often than not lying to you because your gut is based in emotion. Your girlfriend's not about to dump you. Your boyfriend isn't cheating on you. You're not about to go bankrupt. Nobody cares about the zit on your nose, right? That is most likely true. There's a small chance that your perception is correct, but when it comes to gambling, are you going to bet on the small chance or the bigger chance? You should always gamble on the bigger chance. The bigger chance you only really understand through perspective. If you have perspective on something, then you have multiple data points on something. So when you feel yourself getting emotional, stop and let your emotion happen for a second, right? I feel nervous. I feel anxious. I feel doubtful. Okay. I probably don't have to. You probably shouldn't, because whoever's sitting across the table from you, whoever's coming into the room with you, whoever else is on the bus with you, they are all focused on 1,000 different things. And the things that they're focused on most likely don't include you.
Sounds easier said than done.
Correct.
Is that a process of repetitions to train yourself to think like that?
It is. It takes momentum. So what ends up having to happen is that you need to exercise it intentionally at first. And what happens is as you intentionally exercise your perspective over perception, what will start to happen is you will start to see that what you were worried about doesn't happen. And then once you see it not happen, once you see your perspective give you the correct information over your perception, once you see that happen once, then it starts to gain momentum. And then it happens again, and it gains more momentum and more momentum and more momentum until the time comes that you realize it's much easier. But it's a learned skill. You have to learn to think objectively instead of subjectively, think rationally instead of emotionally. And a big part of what helps you do that is understanding that 90% of the people out there, they're all trapped in their own perception. They're all trapped in thinking emotionally. They don't even know that there's an alternative. Just think about this, man. The conversation we're having right now, the people who are hearing this conversation right now, who have never heard that there's a difference between perception and perspective, are already better equipped than all the other assholes who have never heard this conversation. They're already one step ahead of their competition. They're one step ahead of their spouses, their partners, their bullies. They're one step ahead of everybody because now they can use the words perception and perspective, subjective and objective, emotional and logical and rational. They can use these words to define how they want to think, even if they don't think that way yet. That's the huge advantage to what CIA calls the trained and the untrained. Trained people at least are aware that there's an alternative option. Untrained people aren't even aware that there's an option. The vast majority of people out there are what I call bobbleheads. They don't even know there's an option. They're completely unaware of an alternative solution, an alternative process. So they're trapped in their perception. They're trapped in their emotion. They're trapped in their subjectivity. And that makes it so much easier for people like you and me and everyone listening right now to use rational, objective perspective to get those people to do whatever we want them to do.
You've had a lot of recent success in business, with your company, Everyday Spy, and other ventures that you've been involved in. What are some of the fundamental skills that you find yourself transferring directly from your CIA experience every day when you're closing business?
At CIA, there's a saying at CIA that I realized is also a saying in business that I didn't realize until afterwards. And it's called kissing a lot of frogs. Mm-hmm. And it's a salesmanship term outside of CIA, where it means that you have to call a lot of leads, you have to shake a lot of hands, you have to make a lot of pitches before one of them turns into a prince, right? At CIA, we have the same concept, but for a different reason. Because finding a person who is willing to tell you state secrets, willing to risk their life to give away the secrets that they were entrusted with. That's what an actual asset does, right? When CIA sends a field officer to, you name the country. When they recruit an asset from that country, what they are actually recruiting is a foreign national who is a local of that country, who has access to state secrets, who is willing to share those state secrets in exchange for something else. Money, alcohol, pornography, you name it, right? Who knows what they're after? But your job is to find the person who has secrets and give the person the thing that they want in exchange for those secrets. That is a rare person to find. It is hard to find a willing collaborator from a foreign country who has access to secrets and is willing to share those secrets with you in exchange for some kind of remuneration. Very, very difficult to find. But if you can find a spy, if you can find a traitor, you can make a sale, right? The two skills are incredibly interconnected. So what I found is that the process and the skills that we use to find an asset translate immediately into business. Everything from how you talk to the person so that you can identify their core motivations, gaining perspective over that person's position in life. If you can gain the perspective of your customers, you already know what your customer's thinking. You already know what they want. You already know what their problems are. You know what their problems are going to be because you can sit in their shoes, but they can't sit in your shoes, which gives you the advantage. So the process in espionage is a process called SADRAT, SADRAT. Very similar to the RICE acronym I gave you earlier. SADRAT is a process of human intelligence conversion or collection. The SADRAT process is actually the foundation to my company's sales process. All of our marketing for digital sales, all of our human interactions, all of our upselling and everything else all falls into the same SADRAT process that I learned at CIA, only we use it for sales and we use it for marketing.
SADRAT.
SADRAT stands for spot, assess, develop, recruit, handle, and terminate. That's what SADRAT stands for. And in classic US government acronym jargon, handle starts with an H, but in the acronym, we use the letter A. Spot, assess, develop, recruit, handle, terminate. Spot means you find a potential client, right? Recruit means you sell that client on your product in exchange for your product in exchange for their money, right? Assess is a step that we use at CIA to determine whether or not somebody will be a good, productive client. Oftentimes in sales, people skip that step.
Yeah.
They don't think about a good, productive customer. A good, productive customer has lifetime customer value. A good, productive customer turns into referrals, turns into positive reviews and positive ratings. They have infinite value more than just the money they give you in exchange for your service.
CIA believes that all people are born with a spy secret superpower. For some people, that means they can win deals. For others, they can spot liars. Some can even seduce lovers. I built a free 3-minute test to help reveal to you exactly what your secret hidden superpower is. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, take the test, and start using your spy superpower to stay ahead of 99% of people.
Assess is a critical piece in the CIA recruitment process. It's also a very important piece in my company.
I'll tell you something which kind of validates that from my own experience before we continue on that point of assess. In the first couple of years of my first company, we would just take any customer. And when we looked at our financial record for the previous year, what we noticed was that there was a cohort of customers that were exceptionally valuable. And even though we'd won business with this other set of customers, we were actually losing money because they were only lasting for a month.
Yep.
So we made this sort of framework to determine the customers that we should actually say no to, basically, as you say, based on their lifetime value. And we figured out that there's a certain type of brand that has a certain size budget, that has a certain number of employees, that is trying to solve a certain type of problem that would be exceptionally profitable for us. So when we got the inquiries coming through our website, we were now looking at the inquiries through that lens and measuring them through that lens, because it became so clear that all of our best customers fit into the sort of top right of this sort of Venn diagram. And that's what I hear when you say assess. And it was absolutely game-changing for our business. But most entrepreneurs will just take every customer and they think of all of them as having the same potential in lifetime value.
Exactly. You just nailed the word, game-changing. You can play the game by just selling to anybody. But if you want to change the game, you have to make sure that you're selling to a very deliberate cohort of customers. because those customers not only yield more revenue per customer, but they bring in more customers like them, which is where you get an exponential level of not revenue, but profit. Just like you said, you talked about a very profitable group of clients, not a high revenue group of clients. So when you focus the conversation on profit instead of revenue, and you focus it on the right customer instead of just customer, it's game changing for your company.
So you would assess targets in the CIA for using the same sort of framework?
Yep. Using the same framework, because in recruitment operations, what you're looking for is people who will be good assets. In the business framework, what you're looking for is people who will be good customers. An asset and a customer are almost the same thing, right? A customer is the most important asset of a company. And what does a customer do? A customer provides something of value in exchange for something they want. What does an asset do? They provide something of value in exchange for something they want. So it's really a one-for-one comparison as long as you understand the language of espionage and the language of business. So what we did in espionage is every time you're trying to develop a source, you're always asking yourself the question, will this source be a good, reliable asset in the future? Will they do what we tell them to do? Will they be able to provide information in the long term, not just once or twice, right? Is the information they provide high value information? It's the same thing you're doing with a customer. Will this customer do what I tell them to do? Will this customer provide high levels of value? Will this customer last for a long time?
You used the word espionage a few times there. What is the definition of the word espionage?
Espionage is defined as the stealing of secrets. So espionage is always illegal. There's no country in the world that says that espionage is legal. So espionage it's when CIA commits espionage, when MI6 commits espionage, they have a carve out in their law as it pertains to their own undercover clandestine services, so that a American can conduct espionage overseas and not be prosecutable for that espionage under US law if they're part of CIA. Same thing is true in the UK. An MI6 officer can commit espionage overseas and not be held accountable for it under British law. It's a carve out. Otherwise, if you're a British citizen committing espionage anywhere in the UK or abroad, you are punishable under UK law.
I've heard you say that espionage really is about getting people to let you into their secret lives.
Correct.
What is our secret life?
So, if you go back to an earlier part in our conversation, we were talking about how when you trust people, you'll tell them your secrets, right? When you help people, they'll tell you their secrets. There are three lives that anybody lives. We have a public life, a private life, and a secret life. The public life is the life that we're all very familiar with, right? It's the life that you live for everybody else to see, not just the people who watch your podcast and the people who, work for you in your company, but your public life also includes what you show your friends. It includes what you show your church. It includes who you are when you walk down the street. The clothes that you choose to wear are a perfect example of your public life. It's what you want people to think of you. Remember the E in Rice. Mother Teresa wanted people to see her a certain way. That is her public life. When you're in espionage, the goal is to get away from the public life, because if you want someone to give you secrets, you can't get secrets from somebody who's in their public life because they're protected in their public life. So you have to move them from public into secret. And the middle step between public and secret is private life. So you have to move somebody from public life to private life. Private life is the life that your partner knows. Private life is the life that your closest friends know. Your mom and your dad may know it. It's the people who know that your feet secretly stink. It's the people who know that you don't really like to eat oysters because whatever, they give you gas. That's all stuff that's private. Your business partners don't know that. Your customers don't know that. The people who watch your podcast don't know that. And it makes the people in your private life feel like they know you. And it's what makes it so that for you in your public life, you feel like you have meaningful relationships, because instead of 200 people who you kind of know, now you've got 15 people who are in your private life. They know your home address. They know your birthday. They know your favorite ice cream. It makes you feel good. Inside of someone's private life, they will share sensitivities, but they may still not share secrets, because it's one thing to secretly tell somebody that you're worried about your business. You're worried about the next revenue cycle. You're worried about maybe your wife is having an affair. Those things are uncomfortable, but you'll share them with people in your private life. But you would never tell someone in your private life that you're having an affair. You would never tell someone in your private life that you hit your child. You would never tell someone in your private life that your parents sexually molested you or whatever else. Those dark, deep secrets only live in your secret life. The life that's so secretive that you don't even share it with the people in your private life. What we're trained to do is to follow a process that allows us to meet somebody in their public life, get them to let us into their private life, and then get them to let us into their secret life. Because it's a very simple psychological process to get into someone's secret life, because secretly we all want somebody in our secret life. We all want to have someone we can tell our secrets to. We just don't trust anybody in our private life enough to get there. So if you know how to leverage perception and perspective, use the 4 core motivations, when you know how to leverage SADRAT to create trust, you can actually cut into someone's secret life. And once you're in someone's secret life, they never stop trusting you. They never let you leave, because it was so rare and so hard to find you from their perspective. They don't ever want you to leave. So even if you break their heart, even if you lie to them, their trust in you is so great and so strong and so subconscious that you don't ever leave their secret life.
I'm very keen to know how you get into someone's secret life and how they might get into your own. And we've talked about some of those principles earlier, but I was wondering if one of the techniques you might use is by sharing your own fake secret life with them to create an element of comfort. I think I've heard, and I think I know from doing this podcast generally, that vulnerability creates vulnerabilities to some extent, i.e. if you open up to someone, they're more likely to open up to you.
Correct. So you're getting into now a form of mirroring, much like we were talking about physical mirroring. Now what you're talking about is emotional mirroring. There's a nuance there, because you have to know when to mirror appropriately, because if you're mirroring somebody else and they know that you're mirroring them, then subconsciously they feel like they're in control.
Okay, interesting.
So what you need to do is you need to mirror just enough to get to the place where you can get them to mirror you. When they mirror you, subconsciously they know that you're in control. So once you are in a position of power or control in a conversation, then you can use the ploy of feigned vulnerability, which I wouldn't quite use it the same way you did. I wouldn't make up something vulnerable. Instead, we call it opening a window, or opening a window that opens a door. So we have these windows and doors in conversation. So opening a door means completely changing a subject, right? So if I were to just say right now, I don't really like French food, that's opening a door. You as the interviewer can go through that door, or you can close that door because it's not relevant, right? But if I open a window about how I have certain digestive challenges that I don't like to talk about, that's a window. You can always come back and push on that window and get me to go through a whole new door of conversation, right? So when it comes to vulnerability and conversing with somebody about vulnerability, you want to present windows and not present doors. So instead of saying something that's a fake vulnerability, you would say something that's a real vulnerability that may not be applicable to you. Like perhaps you say something like, I have been having massive arguments with my wife recently, and sometimes it makes me just want to leave home. That's real. That's not saying I'm going to leave home. It's not saying what I'm arguing about. But if I believe that in your secret life, you are also fighting with your wife and you're living in a different room and you're not telling anybody about it, I want to show some sort of bridge between us that gets you to admit that to me. Because if you can admit that to me, maybe I can find out more about what you're doing to cope with the fact that your marriage is falling apart. Maybe you have a girlfriend, maybe you're on Tinder, maybe you're doing something else, right? Maybe you're drinking, maybe you're doing drugs. I don't know, but I need you to let me into that secret life. So I'm going to present a window and see if you go through that window.
So say that I was the asset and you were the CIA agent. You have more experience in that role than I do. and I was sat in a bar and I said to you, yeah, God, this week's been really hard at home because my wife, she's annoying me. And you were trying to get into my secret life. How might you maneuver from there?
Right. So there's the basic principle here that we would use is called the 2-in-1 combination. So 2 means 2 questions and 1 means 1 confirmation. So when you present to me a topic that I want to explore further, the most rudimentary of techniques out there is you present to me a topic I want to explore. So I ask a follow-on question. You will answer my follow-on question because you're predisposed to answer my question. I will ask another follow-on question. You'll be predisposed to answer that as well. And then I'll say something that confirms what you're saying. That way it doesn't feel like you're being interrogated. Instead, it feels like you're talking to somebody who gets you. Mm-hmm. So I'll confirm what you say. Like, oh yeah, I mean, I had a girlfriend once and her feet stank so bad. And man, it just made me want to like sleep with her feet outside of the covers. And then you just stop there. Because you've asked 2 follow-on questions and 1 confirming statement, the psychology of the other person is going to be to continue volunteering information. And then you just repeat the cycle. So they give you another piece of information, you follow-up question, confirmation. Follow-up question, confirmation. To you, it feels formulaic. Listen, ask a follow-up question. Listen, ask a follow-up question. To them, it feels like they are talking to somebody who really, really cares. Just put yourself in the shoes. Practice a little perspective here. Imagine if you really were talking about something that was frustrating you and the person sitting next to you at the bar literally didn't do anything other than ask you follow-up questions and agree with you. You're going to feel like, you get me, man. Why can't my wife get me like you get me? Like, you know what I'm talking about. I completely agree with you, man. Tell me more. Oh, dude. And you can see how human beings just fall right into the groove.
The parallel here to business, but also the sort of transferable skills here are quite clear. From what I heard, when I'm doing an interview, when I'm meeting a candidate for a job, when I'm trying to sell to a client, really my disposition should be to be doing exactly what you said, asking them questions, confirming, asking them questions and confirming.
Right. If you think about it, everybody's in a contest for control. Who controls a conversation? The person asking the questions or the person saying the most words? It's always the person asking the questions, because the person asking the questions determines the direction of the conversation.
It feels the other way around, though. It feels like the person speaking the most has the most control.
And what did I tell you about feelings? Don't trust them. Don't trust your gut. Don't trust your emotions, right? It feels like the person talking the most is the person in control. It is not. It is not. The person asking the questions is in control. Think about this interview right now. I will answer whatever question you bring up next. If I don't answer the next question you bring up, I will feel awkward because you and I both know who's in control of this conversation, even though I'm the one saying the most words.
Interesting.
The implications of this in sales, human resourcing, marketing, advertising, it's the reason my company has grown 300% every year for the last 3 years. It's because the human condition is so predictable. People just want to feel heard, they want to feel listened to, and they want to feel validated. You can automate that. You can automate the process that makes people feel heard, confirmed, and validated. You can automate it, and then they will sell themselves. That's really good digital marketing. That's how it works. Really good direct sales, that's how it works. Really good salesmen have already learned this. Real good salesmen understand that it's all about getting a lead to talk about themselves as quickly as possible. And then once they start talking about themselves, you just ask questions. Let them lead themselves through the sales process. The problem is with most business owners out there who haven't been trained in what we're talking about, they feel like they have to talk the most. They feel like they have to get the customer to understand the benefits of the product. I need to get you to hear me. I need to get you to listen. I need to get you to understand the value of what I'm offering you. That's not what the customer wants. That's the salesperson's perception. What the customer actually wants is a product that's going to solve their problems and a salesman that's going to help them. What's the kind of person that helps you? The person who asks questions.